Good evening, folks. Tonight's top story, Chicago crime. Fox News calls it Syria in the Midwest. The mayor calls it progress, and the residents call it just another Tuesday.
I don't see a reduction in crime. I see crime everywhere.
We've got a lot of challenges. We've especially had a lot of challenges the last 5 years.
It's a good thing that Trump is doing something about the crime rates.
Of course crime is down in Chicago, except for the crime you can actually see, which is all of it. Fox then brought on Pastor Cory Brooks, founder of Project Hood, which sounds less like a nonprofit and more like a failed Netflix series.
Let me bring in my next guest. He's made it his mission to help clean up the streets of Chicago. Project Hood founder, Pastor Cory Brooks, joins us now. So, Pastor, we keep hearing from the mayor and governor, crime's going down, leave us alone. Should we leave you guys alone?
Absolutely not. We need to invite President Trump in. We invite the National Guard in. You know, we've had 254 deaths in 233 days. 80% of those have been black boys. And for anyone in our community to say that things are getting better and that people are safe, that is an outright lie. We need to do any and everything we can to keep our citizens safe. One of the number one priorities of government is to make sure that the citizens of America stay safe. And that should be the number one priority of the governor and the mayor, but it's not, because the only thing that they're really concerned when it comes to black lives that matter is black lives that matter that vote.
So we need people like you. I'd love for you to walk the streets with a camera and just ask people, what do you think? Would that help your life if there was National Guard here or more cops in your neighborhood with the National Guard holding down different other sectors that are less challenging?
Oh, the National Guard. Why didn't anyone else think of that? Because nothing says community trust like parking a tank outside of Walgreens. The mayor says murders are down 50%, robberies down 11%. But here's the rest of the chart.
Because we look at these numbers, and this is what the governor and mayor are talking about. Murders are down 50%, robbery down 11%, burglary up 8%, felony theft up 46%, misdemeanor theft up 61%, motor vehicle theft up 80%. Those first two numbers is what they're leaning on. Those other numbers are so disturbing, it's sickening. So how do we break this? How are we going to break with Democrat against a Republican, and we end up in a political fight, and the people are not, their needs are not being addressed?
We break it by telling the truth. We break it by hearing what the people have to say from the community. There's no doubt about it that crime is still a serious problem in the city of Chicago. Anytime you have individuals breaking in stores downtown in Nordstrom's, that's a problem. We still have mothers who are burying young boys and their sons are dying prematurely. That is a serious issue. And for individuals to make us try to feel as if we're witnessing things getting better, that's not right. It's distasteful. And for those who live in our community, we realize that's a lie, and we realize that something needs to be said. That's why I'm speaking out every time I get a chance, because I bury these black boys. I see the mothers who are crying. I see the deaths that are going on every day, and I witness the crime in our community every single day on the sidewalks.
Calling theft up 80% a win is like saying, sure, the Titanic sank, but the band absolutely crushed it.
He says murders are down, but for 13 years, Chicago has the most murders of every U.S. city. He says numbers go in the right direction. 7 consecutive years, Chicago has had the highest murder rate among U.S. cities, with more than 1 million people. I mean, this is as bad as something you would see in a Middle East city, who is going through massive unrest you used to be able to see in Syria.
There are just so many similarities to Chicago and Syria. I had no idea, the deep dish pizza, the Chicago-style hot dogs, and the Catholic roots going back almost 200 years. You almost can't tell these two places apart. But this isn't about crime. Democrats say the numbers show progress, Republicans say they show collapse, and the networks, well, they just want you to watch more ads.
Joining us now, Rod Blagojevich. He has a good idea for how politics works in Chicago. He was the 40th governor of Illinois.
Oh, brother, Rod Blagojevich. Because nothing screams credibility like a governor who went to prison for selling a Senate seat. That's like asking the Fire Festival guy to plan your honeymoon.
I know you watched this Pritzker extravaganza today. He had everyone there. They were all there. Teachers' unions represented. You had the police commission. They were all there. So he apparently is trying to argue, along with Johnson, that things are stupendously better. Not perfect, but far better in Chicago, and that Trump's going there to incite violence. What do you say tonight?
I hope President Trump comes to Chicago and can do in Chicago what he's done in Washington. No murders in Washington in 12 days. In Chicago, 254 people have been murdered in 233 days. You can honestly wake up in the morning and say, somebody's going to get murdered today. And you can also say 80% of the people murdered will be black, because 80% of the murder victims in Chicago are black. And if this was happening in the neighborhood Pritzker and these white limousine rich liberals live in, he would not only beg Trump to bring the National Guard, he'd scream and shout for the Army, the Navy, the Marines, and the Air Force. This is hypocrisy with a touch of racism, and it proves that the Democratic Party today, Black Lives Matter only for their votes, not when it comes to keeping them safe in their disadvantaged neighborhoods.
If you're bragging about 2 weeks without a homicide, that's like celebrating 2 weeks sober while holding a beer bottle.
Now, Danielle, Chicagoans have been dealing with crime for decades, but your governor thinks it's kind of a big joke. Watch this.
Here I am on the path on the lakefront at 6 a.m. on a Monday. And we got a lot of people running, having a great time. Doesn't feel like a hellhole here. In fact, everybody's having a great time and enjoying themselves. So I don't know who in Washington thinks that Chicago is some sort of hellhole, but you may need to look inward.
Right, the lakefront at 6 a.m. Famously where Chicago keeps all its crime. And good for Pritzker for jogging. Though let's be honest, he's not setting the pace, he is the pace car.
We are not thinking about Pritzker or Brandon Johnson. We just had 4 mass shootings in the span of 1 month. 14 people got shot and 4 dead. We just had senior citizens laying shot, bleeding in the streets. And let's not forget the gentleman who we saw, who was on Facebook Live, get robbed and shot while he was sitting in his car. So we don't care about anything these people are saying. Tell Brandon Johnson and Pritzker, if Chicago is so safe, with Brandon Johnson especially, let's leave his 150 police detail. Fire them and walk around with no police detail. And Pritzker, no security. Come in my community, the south side of Chicago. Come over there and let's see you say how safe it is. You can't even sit in your car long. If you sit in your car, you know that it's a chance you're going to get carjacked, robbed, or shot. So tell him to come around in my neck of the woods and talk that.
Meanwhile, the South Side lives in a completely different Chicago. It's basically 2 cities, one for politicians and one for everyone else. Guess which one has the Whole Foods?
Well, Chicago's a tale of 2 cities, because the south side of Chicago, the west side of Chicago are very different places from the Streeterville neighborhood, the Gold Coast neighborhood where Pritzker lives. In fact, life expectancy in the neighborhood Pritzker lives in is 91 years. But in Englewood, just a 20-minute drive away, the life expectancy on the south side in Englewood is 61 years. Police officers are outnumbered by nearly 10 to 1, gangbangers to police officers. 12,000 police officers, more than 100,000 gangbangers. And those communities that are underserved with police presence are the ones who are facing these high crime rates. And here again, this isn't a black and white issue. It's really a moral issue. And when I was a governor back in 2008, I actually talked about sending the National Guard to help Mayor Daley and sending state resources to help Mayor Daley fight crime in those high crime neighborhoods. The great irony is, and this is sort of what Malcolm X says about white liberals, they pretend to be your friend. They're the fox who sees the lamb, but it's the fox who eats the lamb. And in Pritzker's case, I think that lamb chop that Malcolm X is talking about will probably not last very long in JB's plate.
Look at Rod sneaking in a quick little diss right there at the end. But let's take a look at what Pritzker has planned to fix all of this.
But the idea that this is like some nirvana of safety now is ludicrous. I mean, you can feel it. And you can feel the tension in the people there. It doesn't mean, it's terrible all the time, 24/7, no. But they want to sell this idea that if they just had more federal money, that things would be better. That's what they demanded today. Johnson and Pritzker want $800 million, I believe that's what they said, restored to Illinois and Chicago.
$800 million. It's just a drop in the bucket, which in Chicago means $200 million for safety programs and $600 million for miscellaneous envelopes. Now let's watch Rod get a little nervous while he hears about how elected officials should be thrown in prison if they break the rules.
Anybody that's opposed of a president coming in to help our communities to be safer, help our communities from homicides, from robberies, carjacking, and especially an elected official who have a problem with that, those elected officials should be thrown in prison for treason. That's just it. And you know what? Do not send these crooks no money. That's one thing we are asking President Trump not to do. They stole and laundered all our money. Actually, we're asking for a forensic audit. We want an itemized breakdown of how they spent our money on infrastructure, how they spent our money on the illegal alien crisis scam, and we want to know how they spent our money on just crime statistics, because we know they manipulated those crime statistics.
Treason for not liking Trump in Chicago. If they jailed people there for corruption and treason, they would need a prison yard the size of Soldier Field. The news on Chicago crime isn't about keeping people safe. It's about scoring political points. Meanwhile, residents just want one thing: to sit in their car without starring in the next Fox News montage. So while politicians debate, residents dodge bullets, and Blagojevich rehearses his TED Talk, we'll keep calling it like it is. Subscribe to the Chaotic Times, where the only thing more dangerous than Chicago crime stats is missing next week's episode.